Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name's Katie and I'm so excited to film today's video because I'm not exaggerating when I say I've been anticipating filming this advice/Q&A video for like 5 years, and now that I've finally graduated, I feel like I finally have enough experience to answer your questions. But I have gone ahead and divided this video up into 3 parts, with the timestamps are down in the description bar, so if you want to fast forward to whatever section you're in, feel free. But first I'm going to go over getting an undergrad or bachelor's in psychology, then I'll talk about grad school and getting in, GRE scores, all that stuff, and then I will go ahead and talk about what I'm doing specifically for work. I also didn't answer every single question because if I'm honest, there were some questions I just did not have answers to. And first, just as kind of a brief overview, my bachelor's degree, I majored in psychology and minored in Spanish, and then I just completed my master's in industrial organizational psychology. Okay, so the first question, and this is definitely the most popular question, it was asked a bunch of times kind of in different ways, but Cheshire Cat asks, what can you do with just a bachelor's in psychology? I only have 1 semester left in my degree, but I don't want to be a psychologist. So I'll answer this question by, I guess, giving you examples, but I have a ton of friends and acquaintances who have their bachelor's in psych and then did not go on to grad school, and they all have jobs, they all, have perfectly good careers. So as some examples, I know quite a few, like 3 or 4 who went into marketing. My best friend majored in psychology and minored in accounting, and she's now working in the accounting realm. I also have a friend who now works with children with autism. I have a couple friends who just work in like the business world as like project managers, but I don't know specifically what they do. But as you can tell, the common theme kind of throughout all of that is that if you're a psych major and that's all you're planning on doing, you don't want to go to grad school, you can get jobs with that, but the chances are it's not going to be within the realm of psychology. And there is a reason for that, and so you can pause the video and take a screenshot of this if you want to, but here are all the different areas of psychology, and generally if you've graduated with a master's, you've taken 1 to 2 classes within all of these realms. So for example, when I graduated with my bachelor's, I had taken 1 industrial organizational psychology class. So naturally no one's gonna hire me as an industrial organizational psychologist until I've gone to grad school and I've taken a ton more classes within that specific area. So by no means do I think that you have to go to grad school for psych to get a good job, by no means, but if you're trying to get a specialized job within a certain area of psychology, you will probably need grad school. The second question was, did you have any concerns about picking psychology? So I didn't have any concerns, only because I knew that I wanted to go to grad school for some type of psych, but I switched around a ton of times. First I thought I was going to do school, then I thought I might do clinical, but I always knew I was going to go to grad school for psych, so I was never really super concerned about finding a job. But if you are concerned about that and you are concerned about the job hunt being difficult with a bachelor's in psych, I would definitely recommend minoring in something that is gonna definitely help you get a job. So for example, I have a lot of friends who are accountants. I have a lot of friends who work within the computer science realm because they love those areas. And like I said, in some of instances, they majored in psychology and they ended up working in the area that was their minor. So if you're not planning on going to grad school for psych, I would recommend minoring in an area that's gonna definitely help you get a job. Shelby asks, how do you stay financially savvy when it seems that everything in college comes with a fee, even taking out loans? I totally get where you're coming from. Whether you live in the States or you live outside of the States, I'm sure you've heard that within the US it is very expensive to go to school. However, I do want to point out that whenever you're hearing about schools where it's like $50,000–$60,000 a year to go to school, that is not what every school charges. That is generally private institutions. They're private schools or public schools. One is not better than the other. There are good and bad schools within each of those categories. So if you are concerned about money, I would definitely recommend going to a public school within the state you are a resident so that you can get in-state tuition. And I really believe, and you guys can feel free to disagree with me in the comments, but if you are getting a bachelor's in psychology, I do not think there is any reason to be spending 50–60 grand a year. Go to a school where you can get in-state tuition, go to a school that's maybe a little easier to get into, but maybe you got a merit scholarship. That's what I did. I got into one of my top schools, which was Villanova in Philadelphia, but it would have been $50,000 or $60,000 a year, so I didn't go there. Instead, the undergrad I went to, if I'm being 100% honest, was kind of a fallback for me, but I got a huge merit scholarship, so a big portion of it was paid. So I didn't go to my dream school, and that's fine, but I'm also not in a huge amount of debt. So just weigh the pros and cons, and there's also nothing wrong with going to a community college for a couple of years and then transferring to a university. Finally, make sure you just look for different scholarships that might be applicable to you. So for example, my parents were in the military, so I applied to a scholarship. I forget what it was called, but it was for like children who had parents in the military. So I got another couple $1,000s off my tuition a semester because of that. Adeline asks, how true true is that meme that says something like, once you've studied psychology, you can't get angry at people anymore because you understand why they're behaving a certain way. Now, I would never say that I, just because of my degree, I understand why people behave the way they do, but I do think there is some basis to that, just in the sense that I'm less likely to label someone based off of one or two actions I see them do. So for example, if someone makes one shitty remark, I'm less likely to be like, that person is an asshole, or that person is sexist, or XYZ, just because I'm always thinking about, did they say that because of the way they were raised? Did they say that for some like biological reason? So I just think about like the broader context. Leslie Evans asked, how did you know what you wanted to study within psychology? So the most important piece of advice I can give to you is to shadow, shadow, shadow. For example, I thought I wanted to be a school psychologist, and I shadowed 2 school psychologists. I just found them through networking, or my parents or neighbors, or just anyone who knew someone who was a school psychologist. I shadowed them for the day and realized it was not something that would be a good fit for me. Just want to point out, it's a wonderful profession. I just knew that it wouldn't be a good fit for me. So I really think, don't feel like you have to get a 3-month internship to figure out if you want to work within that realm. Just shadow different people so you can see what it would really be like to be in that workplace. Margaret asked, what made you choose psych and not English? So as much as I love reading, I love my literature classes I took in high school and undergrad, there wasn't any type of like job I would want to do with an English degree. Now I know some people are much more brave in the sense that they'll just major in whatever topic they like, regardless of the types of jobs that are out there afterwards, but I'm just the type of person where I wanted to have a really clear idea of the types of jobs I could have with my degree. So just kind of keep that in mind. So now we're gonna get into part 2, which is grad school. And the first question is from Isabel, and she asks, what is the application process like for applying to graduate school in psychology? Did you have any classmates who had an undergrad degree in something that wasn't related to psychology? So at least in the States, the main things you have to do for grad school are 1, take the GRE, and there's another question about that more specifically I'll get into in a second. Then you have the formal application, and then you have the essay you have to write. So the main thing I would say is to work really hard on studying for the GRE and take your time with that essay. Make sure it is beautiful. And if you have to write different essays for different schools you're applying to, definitely just kind of break apart that essay. I'm sure you can pull pieces and use like the same parts of it in different essays. And for your second question, I definitely know tons of people who have gotten into grad schools for psychology who did not major in psychology. The main thing I would say is most of the time you have to have taken the prerequisite courses. So for example, someone in my program had majored in journalism, but she had taken all the prerequisite psychology courses during undergrad that she would need to get into the program that I went to. So the next question is, did you take the GRE? How was your experience? If any of you are watching and you've taken the GRE, obviously share your experiences down below. But at least in my opinion, the GRE is like the SAT, but on steroids. I do think it is more difficult than SAT, just because when you think about it, anyone who's taken the GRE has already taken the SAT and finished their bachelor's, and now they're taking the GRE. The same thing happened to me with the GRE that happened with the SAT, which is to say my verbal reasoning, my reading comprehension, I scored really high. I don't remember my specific scores, but I know I was in like the 80th or 85th percentile. However, with the math section, that was not the case. I was like 1 step below the average score that people get for the math section. And I kind of knew that was gonna be the case. I'm good with grammar, verbal stuff, reading comprehension, math, not so much. I Live for Books asked, would you mind giving a timeline for your studies through psych? So for my bachelor's, that was a 4-year degree. Then immediately following my bachelor's, I had an internship that summer right after I graduated. Then that fall, I went and taught English in Spain for 9 months. And then while I was in Spain, I was researching schools, talking to people who went there, and applying to grad schools. And then my grad school program was 2 years with an internship in between, in the summer in between. So definitely do not be afraid to do something else for a year after you graduate from undergrad. I know a ton of people in my program who worked for a year and gained experience out in the workplace, and then they went to grad school and it worked out perfectly for them. Next, someone's asked, I'm not a psychology student, however, I'm coming up on my senior year of undergrad and wanted some advice on just how to pick the right grad program, school, everything like that, and look for internships. So the main thing I would say is go to, since you said you don't study psychology, go to whatever it is that your major is and go to like the national board for whatever it is you study. That was really vague. So what I'm trying to say is, for example, I was gonna get my degree in industrial organizational psychology. So I went to the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology. It's called SIOP. I went to their website and I read, you know, the rankings for different PhD and master's programs, got a ton of information there. And then so once I narrowed it down to say 10 schools I was interested in, I contacted students who are currently at the schools. So many universities have their students' email addresses just up on there so you can email them. Surprisingly, if a student does not like their master's program, they'll straight up tell you often, so that was super valuable. Rebecca asked, what relevant experience did you have when applying to grad schools? So the main thing I had from undergrad was I had a number of research apprenticeships or research assistantships, blanking on what they were called. I'm sure it depends on your school, but at least at my school they were super easy to come by because there were PhD students there who just needed help, so I would help them with their, you know, psychology labs. And at least for psych, they love seeing whatever kind of research you did in undergrad. And my research had nothing to do with industrial organizational psychology. They knew that based off of that I could understand data and just, you know, basic psych processes, all of that. And then I also had that internship that was from right after I graduated with my bachelor's. I'm getting so out of breath. And now we are getting into the final question, which is what I'm specifically doing for work. So the first question was, what is your ideal job once you graduate with your master's degree? Do you think you will ever change your mind? If so, what other career choices are there out there? So with the next question, I'll answer what my job exactly is, but with this question, my ideal job. So my ideal job, like 15 years down the road, once I've gained tons of experience, I really want to work within, I guess, the developmental side of IO psychology. So I really want to work within, say, leadership development, talent development, performance management. I also really love selection processes. So the selection process that people take to apply for a job, whether that be online and they're taking some kind of like personality assessment, because a lot of the assessments that organizations have people take are unvalidated. They're just horrific and have really low validity. So I want to create things like that. But getting into the second part of your question, if so, what other choices are out there? So it's really important to point out, and this is something that I didn't understand until grad school, but the reason a lot of people have not heard of industrial organizational psychology is because no one walks around and says, hi, I'm Katie and I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. Industrial organizational psychology is not a career, it's a field. So there are three main areas that people work in. So you can say be a consultant. I have a number of friends who went into the consulting realm. One of my good friends works in change management. And if you go to SciApp's website, they have a really good information graphic about types of jobs you can go into. A lot of people go into HR or human resources, which you might be thinking like, oh, that's kind of strange. I wouldn't think an IO psychologist would go into HR. But when you think about HR, it's really just about developing the people within an organization. Prior to grad school, I definitely thought it was just about making sure people were politically correct and firing people and dealing with disputes. That's only like 5% of what HR does. So if you have a degree in IO psychology, you can go to any of these realms of HR and work. I also just have a friend who got a job offer to like develop a company's orientation and onboarding process. So that's also kind of within HR. And then kind of the third broad area you can go into with an IO psychology degree is to continue on, get your PhD, continue doing research, and become a professor. Tessa asked, the more and more you talk about physiology, I assume that was an autocorrect mistake and she meant psychology. The more interested I become in actually taking that career path, what exactly would you be doing on a day-to-day basis in the workplace? So you guys know I don't like giving out super personal details about myself, so I'm not gonna say like what company I'm working for, but basically I'm gonna be an analyst. So I'm gonna be working at a fairly large company working with employee engagement, compensation analysis, performance management, just like a wide variety of things. And the reason it's a wide variety is because I'm doing what's called a rotational program. And when I say program, it's not like a school program. This is a legitimate full-time job. You can find rotational programs in accounting, operations, finance. Tons of really large companies have these rotational programs where someone's hired and they generally will rotate throughout different offices in the company for a number of years. And it's kind of to like accelerate leadership development. So that is why if you've seen me saying on Twitter, well, the reason I didn't know where I was moving until recently is because it's a rotational program. So every 8 months for the next 2 years, I'm going to move, and then I'm guaranteed that, you know, I'll have a job after those 2 years. So, and I do think once I move in 2 weeks, I'm gonna film an update video and I'll talk about where I moved and all that stuff. And the final question, and I thought this was hilarious because you guys know, if you follow me on Twitter, I love the TV show The OA. But someone said you should make a picture in the style of The OA, but with you and the IO. Anyway, and she says, as for a question, what would you say are the qualities that are a good fit for an IO psych career? I'm realizing that even though this is the last question, I never described what IO psychology is. So I'll put a graphic up here from the ChapterStackss website if you want to pause it and read that. to understand exactly what it is, but it's basically psychology applied to the workplace, a ton of statistics. So I would say there's not like a personality type that I think you would have to work within this realm. I don't think you necessarily have to be extroverted and like love people, but at the very least you have to be really interested in people, and specifically be really interested in kind of developing people and improving their lives in the workplace, and it's kind of, that's the whole point of it. That was the final question, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And again, I know I was offering a lot of advice in this, but I'm not like the word of God. I haven't started my job yet. So if you're watching this video and you have any advice, or if you have different opinions than how I answered the questions, please feel free to leave that down below. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon. Bye.